So I welcome everybody to this webinar from Gamechangers Readership Promotion Network. This program was designed to celebrate World Book Day, which was on the 5th of March, celebrated 5th of March every year in the UK and Ireland. And we've decided to look at some of the challenges of migrants, who find themselves in new society, new culture, new environment, and to see how reading can be a tool to navigate some of those challenges. So we've come up with a topic, unlocking migrants' social currency, reading your way up in a new society. Today, we have three seasoned panelists that will join us in discussing this. The first panelist is Dr. Samuel Eze, who is a senior lecturer at Harper Adams University in the UK. Thank you, Sam. Thank you for agreeing to be part of this. The second panelist is Ms. Chiamaka Ihoma, who is Human Resource Manager here in the UK. Chiamaka, you say hi to everyone? Thank you very much. And the last person is Dr. Kenechukwu Ilabuchi, who is a product service training specialist in Germany. Dr. Ken, we can see you anyway.
Hi, everyone. Nice to have you here. And I hope we have a very wonderful discussion this evening.
Thank you. All right. Yeah. So without wasting time, I will soon. So my name is Ebere Ihemeze. I will be your moderator for today's program. And as always, Game Changer, we always have monthly webinars in addition to our monthly book reading that we do. There's virtually no month that we don't have at least minimum of two webinars. A standard one on book review and other ones on different issues that we think that reading can help us to address. Without wasting time, because we want to try to keep the entire webinar within an hour 30 minutes. So I wouldn't want to take much of our time. But in terms of the way the program will go, each of the panelists will make a presentation on their title or on the topic they are supposed to talk on. And then if you have your questions, please put them on the chat box and I will read them out. If you also want to, after each panelist, if you have any question that you want to, you're free to raise your hand down and then we'll take up the questions. So the idea is to listen to the panelists and they pick relevant questions that will then inform our subsequent discussion. All right. So I want to introduce our first panelist today. A minute, let me share my screen again. Okay, so I want to introduce our first panelist. Our first panelist today is Dr. Samuel Eze, like I've mentioned before. Dr. Sam is a senior lecturer at Harper Adams University here in the UK. He relocated to the UK for postgraduate education and academic work. Before joining Harper Adams University, Dr. Sam held a research positions at the University of Leeds and the University of Lincoln, both in the UK. He holds a PhD in physical geography alongside an MSc in sustainable environmental management and a bachelor's degree in soil science. Dr. Sam brings a lived understanding of how migrant skills, knowledge, and qualification often require translation to be recognized and valued in a new society. Today, Dr. Sam will be talking to us on the topic, Learning the Codes, how reading teaches you the understanding of the host society, rebuilds your identity, dignity, and belonging. We expect him to touch on issues such as understanding how society works, in terms of norms, systems, and expectations, issues around accent, vocabulary, idioms, and professional language, The psychological dimension of migration, such as loss of status after migration, identity crisis, inferiority complex, and how reading can be a tool for healing, for re-anchoring, and for reimagining one's future. Dr. Sam, you have the floor for your presentation, and thank you for accepting this call. I'll stop sharing now so you can share your screen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Eberichku. That was a great introduction, and it's a privilege to be with you this evening. I think you will need to give me an access.
Yeah. You can share now.
Okay. All right. Okay. Right. Can you all see my screen?
Yes. Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. Hello, everybody again. Like JP, sorry, I call him by in short JP. So Dr. Iyemeze has introduced already. I've shortened the title, but it's essentially the same thing, is reading the language of the host society. And before going into the main topic, I wanted to give some statistics. Some of us already know that migration has become key aspect of our modern society. People move from our countries to other countries, and we see people coming from other places to where we are. So this slide shows the trend over time of international migration. So the summary of this slide is that 1 in 27 people in the world are international migrants. So that gives us an idea that there's so many people who have migrated, and there are more who are planning to migrate. Okay. And I've just picked the top 10 countries of destination of international migrants. And as you can see from this slide, Western Europe is one of the top places that people move to. Now, why do people move? Okay. I have divided the factors that push people to move into two. One is pressures, things like conflicts or climate change, people being unable to sustain themselves in the environment again. And then you have pull factors, which are opportunities, attracting people to wherever they're going. But if you look at all of these factors, what is underlying, whether they are push factors or pull factors, is global economic inequalities. Some countries have better welfare systems, better employment opportunities, better pay, the strength of the currency. These are some of the issues that underlie whether it is the push. So you have a pressure because you are no longer earning as you should or how you expect to earn, or what you are earning where you are is no longer sustainable. Okay. And then you find another place that offers more, a better salary, and the system works better. And then that leads people to move in addition to all the other factors. But I want to focus on this aspect in this presentation. So people move to find employment, to earn higher wages, escape poverty. So all of this revolves around economics, okay? So, and that's the one I will be talking about, because over 160 million international migrants go for work. They move to other places for work. And that is why it is important to focus on it in this discussion. So moving to another country is not a problem in itself. But what the people that move, the migrants, face in those countries is what we'll be discussing this evening. And some of these issues revolves around social language. So moving is not only about geography. You're moving from one physical space to another physical space. What you encounter is that you are changing the social rules in your environment. You're moving to another area that have different expectations of you in terms of behavior, in terms of communication, in terms of how you should conduct yourself. So it is a completely different language. So when I mean language, I'm not talking about grammar, because when people move often, they already speak the language of the host countries. So what I mean are the expectations and not the grammar. Now, what happens is that because of the difference in social language, okay, migrants then struggle because their experiences, their skills, their knowledge are not immediately recognized in those host countries. Okay, it creates a lot of problems because it then leads to people that have had so many years of experience in their countries, whether it is in leadership, in IT, whichever sector it is, they may have spent years in those countries accumulating those experiences, but then it becomes a problem because those experiences are not recognized, and it leads those professionals to then take on low-skill jobs. And then it frustrates many, leads to mental health issues. It causes a lot of problems. So that is the basis for my own topic this evening, to explore this issue and how migrants can navigate it. So to address it, one key step is to understand the host society. And what do I mean by that? To understand the host society, I have grouped the social language that I mentioned earlier into visible rules, which include laws of the society, of the host society, official procedures, public policies. These official documents, for example, in the United Kingdom, you have the government website with a lot of useful information on various aspects of the society. Okay. And then we have invisible rules. These are social norms. What people in the host society consider to be important, what is more important to them, how they expect people to behave under different contexts, and the cultural assumptions, the meanings attached to different behaviors. So that is usually one of the key aspects of social language that migrants struggle with because they are unfamiliar to them. Okay. Now, to address those problems, how to understand the host society or the language, the social language of the host society, there are various ways for doing that. But I'm going to focus on the one that really affects migrant workers, which is successful professional integration. And to achieve that, there are two key strategies. One is to translate one's experience into forms that the new society understands. Like I said before, migrants carry a lot of experiences which are very useful. But the problem is whether the host society understands those experiences or the way those experiences are being presented. So the first step is to be able to translate one's experiences, one's skills into forms that the new society understands. Then two, to make the experiences visible to the institutions in the new society, the employers, the communities that the migrant intends to work with. Okay. Now, to break it down into steps of how to achieve these two, translating those experiences and making them visible. Reading, I can easily summarize it by saying the migrants should just read those available documents. However, I understand that reading voluminous materials is not everyone's strength. Okay, there are individuals who enjoy that, and it's not a problem for that to read as much materials that are presented in text, or as much information in text format as possible. But not everyone enjoys that, and not everyone is okay with that, considering that the migrant will have to work, to pay bills, and do all of the other expenses. So the time to do that, okay, is a problem for many. But that is not bad news. There are other ways of reading, in quotes. And because naturally humans have different learning styles, okay? Some may rely on observation, conversation, practice, or mentoring. And I'm going to explore these different areas in this discussion this evening. Okay. So one step, whether you prefer to read written materials or not, what is important to be able to integrate, okay, into the professional life of the host society is to use the local professional language. And one way of doing that is your CV, okay, or resume. One, in some cases where I've had to review CVs of migrants, you will find that it's complete. They would have done a lot of things in different sectors or have spent many years, but how to then put those experiences in forms that are recognizable by the society where I am, it's the problem. So that is one of the key things that migrants need to do, to understand how to adapt the experiences in CV format to local standards. Check local standards. Check how it's been presented. Information, experiences are being presented, and present it in that way. That is one way of telling the employer that, oh yes, I've had relevant experience. Okay. Two is to use the terminology that is common while presenting the information, and focusing on transferable skills, because most of these countries that are preferred destinations that I showed earlier, they prefer transferable skills rather than just job titles. I was a professor for 10 years. I was the managing director for 20 years. Be specific and outline the transferable skills that will be useful, that the host community will find valuable. Two, rather than relying on just formatting or translating those experiences in CV format, you need to demonstrate the skills through practice. And one way of doing that, particularly when migrants find themselves doing something, job that is not the ideal job, is to volunteer. Make out some time to volunteer, do some internships or work placements, be involved in community projects, or, for example, those in IT, you can write some codes, make them available, and then your name, you're showing the public that this is what you can do. Then the third one is to network. Okay, attend professional events in relevant areas of interest, join communities, like I said earlier, and participate in industry associations that are relevant to your area of interest. That networking allows one to learn informally from others. So when we talk about the social language or interactions, by the time a migrant immerses themselves in those networks, those communities, and those professional events, you start to pick up the language, the social language, and not just social language, but where you are preparing yourself to work. Then the next one is mentorship and peer learning. And all of these areas that I'm mentioning draws on the different learning styles that I have mentioned earlier. So you don't just have to rely on reading text, trying to make meaning of text, which sometimes can be complex, as I explained earlier. So you can identify someone who understands that area that you are interested in, and let them serve as your mentor. They will interpret the workplace culture, what is expected, what is not expected. It will help to improve your communication styles, refine job application, like I mentioned earlier, where I have had to review CVs and applications. Mentors serve that important role. Then they will also help one to understand professional pathways. And the last one is to explore other ways through which information is presented. Now we have various ways, videos, online resources. If you can't read it, there are audio recordings where you can access the same information and then see whether you need to top up qualification to be able to fit in the area of interest. Thank you so much for listening.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sam, for this wonderful presentation. I know there's so many people probably that will have questions. I have my own questions too, but I'm looking at time and I think we might have to take all the presentations first and then we go into questions and general discussion because some of the questions might be answered by another person, so without wasting time, we go into the second presentation. Sam, thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. This next person, our next panelist is Ms. Chiamaka. Give me a minute, let me pull up her. Screen. Okay, so our next panelist is Mrs. Chiamaka Ihuoma. Mrs. Chiamaka Ihuoma is a human resource manager at TLC Care in the UK. She holds a bachelor's degree in crop science from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and a master's degree in human resource management from Aston University in Birmingham. She's taken up roles working as a kitchen porter, taking on cover teaching, freelance HR consulting, unpaid volunteer HR roles for startup companies. Chiamaka is a lifelong learner, an avid reader, and someone who truly believes that your starting point does not define your destination. Today, Chiamaka will be talking on the topic From Survival Jobs to Strategic Careers, Reading as the Migrants' Career Acceleration. Her talk will focus on issues such as how reading can help migrants to reskill, to reframe qualifications, and to understand professional systems, both in the UK and in Europe. She will also touch on how reading can be a source of informal re-education, serve as a bridge between foreign training and local standards, and a pathway to leadership roles. Chiamaka, thank you for accepting our call. I'll stop sharing my screen now so that you can share yours.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. I'll be sharing my screen now. Okay. Okay. So, thank you, Dr. JP, for introducing me, so I don't need to do that anymore. I'll delve quickly into the topic, which is reading and professional mobility, from survival jobs to strategic careers, reading as a migrant career accelerator. Right. Sorry. Use this. Okay. So, from survival jobs to strategic careers, according to Professor Alexander Betts in 2013 from the University of Oxford, he developed the concept of survival migration. In this concept, he focuses on the various reasons for migration, which involves taking low-skilled survival jobs upon arrival, However, researchers studying migrant employment in Chicago have documented this as a survival job trap, where migrants take the first available low-skilled jobs to meet immediate needs, which can then hinder their long-term career prospects. But then there is the migrant reality. So according to the Migration Observatory in 2005, 19% of UK employees were non-UK nationals. That's over 5.7 million people. Now, these migrant employees were overrepresented in some sectors, such as the hospitality, the hotels, the health and care sectors, and also some administrative roles. But then they also discovered that non-UK born workers are slightly more likely to be in high-skilled occupations than the UK born workers. Highly educated migrant workers are often overqualified for the jobs which they find themselves in. Then foreign-born workers, that's the migrants, are also more likely to work during night shifts and in non-permanent jobs than the UK-born workers. This is the finding from Michael O.C. in 2002. So reading as informal re-education. Reading, therefore, becomes a self-directed classroom, a cultural decoder, a professional translator. Beyond academic language learning, like Mr. Sam explained, reading allows migrants to decipher complex documents, to understand their rights in the host community, and to adapt to new professional environments. So how do migrants reskill through reading? As a migrant, when you invest in reading, you are able to access training resources, which is essential in gaining new skills, especially in sectors like the healthcare and administration. When you read, you get familiar with the job market by reading industry news, company websites. This helps migrants in skill matching, right? So reading also helps to overcome underemployment. It reduces the risk of being overqualified as you move into more senior or relevant roles. This is a finding from Mangalam in 2025. So how do you reframe your foreign qualifications or experience? You start by answering the question, why isn't my degree enough? Because most times when migrants arrive their host countries, they struggle to fit in, they struggle to get jobs that are as per their level, and then they wonder why. But when you read the society that you've entered into, when you try to study and do your research, you find out that there are a lot of ways you can translate your international qualifications, your international experience into the UK language, just as Dr. Sam explained. And you also have to recognize the transferable competencies, right? For example, if you're a teacher in Nigeria and you migrate to the UK, you can't just start teaching with your qualified status. You first of all need to translate your qualification from Nigeria to the UK standard. Thereby, you will see where there is a gap for you to bridge. So, and you can do this using some systems, like for teaching, you need to translate your teaching qualifications using the ENIC, and the ENIC is also used for other qualifications. This helps you to know the actual skilled level, the actual degree you have, how it is measured or compared to the host society. Sorry, I'll be focusing more on the UK because I don't really know much about the other countries. So when you read as an immigrant, your mindset shifts from being overqualified but overlooked to strategically aligned professional. Okay. So understanding the UK professional systems. Reading helps migrants to pick up on professional nuances such as the tone, the expectations, and the communication styles, bearing in mind that every society has their unwritten codes. They have their styles of communication, which they expect you to be aware of. And if you're not smart enough to pick on this, you might be missing out, right? You might be wondering why, I'm overqualified for this role. Why Why are they not responding to my applications? Why are they not calling me back? Why is it difficult for me to integrate? Well, sometimes it's because you've not actually understood the unwritten codes when it comes to employment in the host country. So when you read, this helps to build also your digital literacy, especially for higher skilled jobs. Reading also allows the immigrants to understand their employment rights, such as their contract, their wages, the tax, the NI and the deductions and all of that. And this is very important to avoid them being exploited or feeling exploited. Reading as cultural capital. Reading functions as a cultural capital by equipping immigrants with the knowledge and understanding of their new society. It also enhances communication and vocabulary, which also increases your social status, because if you're not able to communicate in the language that people will understand, if you're not able to pick on the cues, you're going to feel less confident in yourself, and once your self-confidence is affected, you would not be able to achieve much in that situation or in that society. Sorry. So by reading, you also build societal and cultural competence necessary in navigating different contexts and different institutions. Reading also increases your ability for reading and evaluating complex information. So from adaptation to leadership, migrants who they don't just fit in, they build confidence and soft skills, which is very essential for leadership roles. Migrants who read also understand workplace culture and market needs, which is essential for the transition from low-skilled jobs to more specialized roles. They also develop leadership and advocacy skills, which is important to influence policy and drive change. There's no way you can drive change or influence policy or be in leadership positions if you don't read and if you don't understand what's been put in place, if you don't understand the culture, the organizational culture or organizational behavior. There is no way you can drive change. And reading also helps immigrants to acquire language and professional communication skills. To sum it up, there are a few practical reading strategies for migrants. This includes pre-reading and engagement strategies. For instance, you want to apply for a job. A lot of people don't read before they apply for a job, and that's why they get rejections and they wonder why. But I also understand, like Dr. Sam said, not many people have strength in reading voluminous books or write-ups. Okay, so that is why it's important to learn how to read. It's not everything that you read, not everything is relevant to you, not everything is going to impact your life positively. So before you read, you have to preview what you have to read. You have to also predict what the material is all about. You have to scan it and skim through it before you invest your time to reading it. Otherwise, you'll be wasting your time, valuable time, reading things that are not valuable, things that are not going to impact you in any way. So when you read, for instance, if you migrate into a new society, you have to calm down and research. You have to know what is obtainable. You have to know what you bring in. You have to know the skills you have, and you have to know the skills you need to build on, right? And the best way to get this analysis is by studying, by reading, right? For instance, you want to apply for a job, you don't just apply for a job without reading the job description. And then I know sometimes some jobs, they post a lot of unnecessary details in their description. So, but you have to be careful. You have to scan. That's why it's important to scan. So you pick out if you have a very high chance of securing this job, if you have the skills that are necessary for this job, if it's relevant to you before you start applying, so you don't just waste your time in application that is not going to turn out positive. So active reading and comprehension techniques such as faster reading and making connections are also very important. So when you've skimmed and scanned documents you want to read, then you have to try to make connections and to read faster, because I mean, the world is moving fast. You will not want to waste your time on materials that are not relevant. You also
3 minutes, please.
yeah,
3 minutes. 3 minutes.
rounding up. Sorry.
Yeah. All right.
So it's important to follow professional thought leaders in your field. If you migrate to a new society and you want to practice, you want to build on your career, or probably you came in through studies, you finished studies, and you want to follow on that career route, you need to learn to follow professional leaders in that career field. Follow them on LinkedIn and on social media, and just read what they are putting out there and try to get as much impact as you can. So you can also join reading communities or professional forums. Okay, so remember, this is the last one. Migration changes your geography, but it is reading that changes your trajectory. Reading is the accelerator that shifts the migrants from survival to strategic careers. Thank you for reading.
Thank you, Chiamaka, for your presentation. I've actually got a lot of questions for you from your presentation, but I will keep it after the last panelist has presented his own. So thank you once again. And without wasting time, I will be introducing our third and last panelist for the day. Who is in the person of Dr. Kenechukwu Ilabuchi. Dr. Kene is a service training specialist with Thermo Fisher Scientific Incorporated in Germany, where he trains global service engineers on maintaining HPLC systems used in analytical separation for testing, diagnostic, and research purposes. Previously, Kene was a research scientist at the University of Constance in Germany, where he obtained his PhD, and also a lecturer at the Department of Biochemistry, University of Nigeria, Nsukka. Kene holds a BSc and MSc in Biochemistry and MSc. In Biochemistry, that is first degree in UNN, and MSc in Biotechnology from the University of Leeds. Again, today, Kene will be talking on the topic that links reading and social class navigation. And his topic is crossing invisible borders, how reading can open doors to networks, confidence, and high society. He will touch on issues such as reading as a builder of confidence, class fluency, and conversation power. He will also talk on how books can teach you how elites think, how institutions reason, and how influence works. Kenneth, thank you for accepting our call, and I'll stop sharing now so you can share your screen.
All right, thank you, JP, for the wonderful introduction. Good evening, everyone. So I'll share my screen now so that I can start to discuss. Let me see. Yeah, this is it. Oh, okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, that's nice. So I'm going to be discussing the topic crossing invisible borders. Oh, sorry for the mistake. I already see one mistake in the spelling in the border. Sorry for that. So reading as a passport that opens doors in a new country. I'm meant to understand that, I mean, at least I've sort of scanned through the participants, during this meeting, and I've seen that a lot of us are probably Nigerians, and I'm meant to believe that some of us have already migrated to our new countries. Some of us are probably in the process of migrating. Others are still considering to migrate. And I want to tell you that migration, I mean, the decision to migrate, as well as carrying out the process of migration, is a very brave and bold decision. It's not something that should be easily taken. I mean, it shouldn't be taken lightly, because when you move from one country to the other, you would have to do what? Face new systems. And in some cases, you may have to do what? Learn new languages. You would have to integrate into a new culture. And the competition level there is completely different from what you used to know. And of course, the expectation is also going to be there, new expectations, because you are moving to a place where you didn't start in. So, for example, I mean, if you grew up in Nigeria, the system in Nigeria is completely different from the system of whatever country you're moving to. And you would have to do what? Get used to this. And nobody's going to give you the time to get used to this, right? So it means you have a new set of challenges, almost like you starting up life afresh. I'm sure everybody here who has migrated at the beginning felt that, well, they've just had to start life afresh. So they've started nursery school again. But the problem is that you would then have to cross nursery to university within a short period of time. So nobody gives you that time. But of course, the reason why you are moving is also because you want to probably explore new opportunities. Of course, I understand that there are some people who moved simply because of situations beyond their control. But for many of us, moving is something that we decided to do simply because we are seeking new opportunities. So you get to your new place and you've seen all these challenges, you've come across this new environment, and then you begin to struggle. I'm yet to find anyone who moved and didn't struggle, because it's a very challenging experience, to sort of put yourself in. And the reason why you struggle is not because you are not intelligent, because you don't have ambition. I mean, it's actually ambition that makes you to move from where, in most cases, it's ambition that makes you to move from where you were to where you would find better opportunities. And it's not because you're not working hard, because for the fact that you've decided to leave where you were to move to somewhere else means that you're willing to do the work. You've done the sort of the preliminary part of the work, which is the process that gets you to move, right? So the reason why you face this struggle is simply because in your new society, you're a jambito, like we used to say in Nigeria. And what it means is you are basically ignorant generally, because there are lots of information you don't have. You don't even have a complete picture of how the system works. You've only depended on what you think, and what you think might be different from reality, right? And then you come in there, you begin to experience new cultures. Where you were, if you were back home, you are like everybody back home. You move into a new place, you look different. In many cases, you look completely different, that they don't need to look twice to know that you're different. And if you happen to move to some other places where you don't even understand the language, then you already have that big disadvantage that you struggle with language. When I moved to the UK, it was very easy, because of course, language is the currency of socialization in every society. So I could discuss with anybody. And then I moved to Germany, and then it became something completely different, because, yeah, you might read online and they say, oh, people should be able to understand English. But the truth is that your day-to-day interaction is also with people who moved from where they don't speak English. And so they come into this new place. English is not the language, but you have to relate with them, because they probably are, on your path. And so the only language with which you can discuss with them would be the language of the host country. And so this becomes a very big challenge to you too. So these are the reasons why you would struggle. But it's normal to struggle, because of course, if you don't struggle, you won't make any progress, because in struggling, you learn, and in struggling, you build resilience. But I want to tell you that there are some ways to shorten this learning experience, to make it easier for you to sort of gradually bridge it and begin to climb the ladder. And one of the most important ways you could do that is by reading. You can't avoid it. If you don't read, you won't move anywhere. It's as simple as that. So the moment you decide that you're not going to read, that is the moment you've told yourself, well, I'm giving up. And at that point, just tell yourself that there is no more movement for you. What you may need to do is you just keep doing lateral movement, and at the end of the day, if you become frustrated, you leave the system. So I would just tell you that if you don't read, you won't have any access in the society you find yourself in, right? Because of course, if you happen to find yourself in a place where you don't know the language, you must have to read to learn to study the language. You don't study the language by just listening. You have to read it, right? Of course, there are people who have the gift of, listening and then they can pick up things. But if you want to go professional, you have to study it the right way, which is you go to classes, do the reading, read the materials, and read beyond the materials. And of course, if you are moving on the professional cadre, you need to learn the vocabulary. So you must communicate. Even if you're not able to at least speak in the language, you should be able to understand it when it's spoken to you. You should be able to pick up the vocabulary when you happen to find yourself in a place where things are being discussed in the language of your host country. So you should be able to, even if you know the language, right, you should be able to at least understand how it's said. So you must read. And for you to learn the culture, of course, yeah, you have to integrate, interact with people, join groups and stuff like that. But beyond that, you also need to read local materials. You need to read what has been there. You need to read documentaries or histories or books about the place where you are. So you need to find out how the people you relate with, where they are coming from, because they're coming from somewhere. They have a history, right? They have things that make them unique. Every time you find yourself in has their own history. So you should be able to do what? Read and understand what this history is. So if you read and you begin to breach this barrier, then what you have is what? The access. And once you have this access, what happens? You begin to grow in confidence. Because the truth is that to survive in any new society you find yourself in, you need confidence. Because there are things that will crush your spirit. There are things that will make you feel as if you've made a mistake in your life. But the moment you begin to read to understand how the system works, the moment you begin to read to understand what the people mean when they say something, to understand what the people expect, to understand how you can fulfill whatever expectations that are made of you, of course, reasonable expectations that are made of you, the moment you begin to understand these things, your confidence begins to grow. And once your confidence begins to grow, what happens? You begin to discover opportunities that you never knew were there. And with these opportunities, what happens? You begin to have access to society. And so I'll come down to these things one by one, right? So I've explained that when you read, right, you understand a lot about what you read. And when you understand a lot about what you read, or about a particular topic or whatever themes you sort of read, what happens? You can get into discussions about them. How do you socialize? Even in beer, in bars where people drink, depending on the kind of people you relate with, because of course, I mean, if you expect to keep climbing the ladder, maybe at the point you come in, you don't know anybody, so you can have anybody as people you hang out with, because you at least you want to sort of find what's it called, roots and anchors where you can fit and start. At some point, you may begin to do what especially if you want to climb, because my focus is on access and growing within the system. You will then begin to find what? Kindred spirits. And those kindred spirits are those who are going to discuss things that are relevant to you. They could be people from your background, from the same background, who have been there, who were there before you, who are at your level, but are still making the same effort. They could also be local people whom you've built a bit of social interaction with. And the truth is, if you don't have anything to contribute during social interaction, nobody calls you around. Maybe they call you only when they drink and they want to sort of be merry. But even in being merry, they're also looking at how you relate. What can you discuss? If you come into a group and they're discussing things, local things, professional things, or whatever they're discussing, and you're not able to contribute simply because you don't have enough information, what happens? Is either they push you out or you begin to feel left out, right? If you read, the more you read, the more you're able to do what? Think fast. Because then it means whatever somebody says or whatever scenario that comes up, you've lived it in your head, you've lived it in books, you've seen it somewhere, you've read it somewhere. So what it means is you can react faster, you can contribute faster, you can understand faster. And when you ask questions, people see that, oh, okay, this person is asking questions from knowledge, from a place of knowledge and not completely ignorance. So you see that reading begins to change who you are. It begins to give you confidence where before now you had timidity. It begins to make you feel as if, okay, I'm equal to scratch, where you used to think, okay, how do I break barriers? How do I come in? So you need to read. You need to read. I can only tell you that. And I've mentioned that, of course, with reading, you begin to do what? Improve your networks. You can, except if one network of those who only go to parties. But even among those who go to parties, people are still doing what? Scanning and looking for networks that will go beyond parties to professional life. And you would have to understand that professional spaces, they don't run on talking about which beer is the best beer. The only time which beer is the best beer becomes something of interest is if you work in a brewery and they're discussing beers to find out which one or which formula, creates a product that people like more. Beyond that, nobody comes to professional life and then they're thinking about which, of course, it could be a 1 or 2 minute banter thing where people mention something. But what people are talking about are things that have to do with particular shared knowledge. So if your target is to move into a particular area, of course, you are looking for people who are in that area to relate with. And so you must have knowledge in that area so that even in course of open discussion, let's say you go to a social gathering and then somebody comes up and says, okay, oh yeah, who are you? What do you do? You should be able to discuss, tell what you do. You should be able to mention things that show that you actually are in this area, because you don't know where your next big contact that is going to take you to the higher place is coming from. And so you should be able to be knowledgeable enough. When people ask you questions in social gathering, you should be able to do what? Talk like somebody who has not just narrow understanding of whatever you're talking about, but how it connects to others. Because your job tomorrow may not be exactly what you've studied today or what you know today, but how you can connect things so that somebody else looks at you and says, okay, yes, this person could be in our team. Or they could refer you to somebody who would be in your team. And that is where shared reference comes from, because you are knowledgeable. And of course, in the course of discussion, people want to know how well you think. This is not a society, sorry, I must say. But then, coming from Nigeria generally, you listen to people and then you're like, okay, what is this person talking about? In this kind of society, if you want to move up, you have to make logical arguments. You don't just use emotion. You have to realize that in discussions, you have to make logical arguments and understand how to make this argument. And so I can tell you that reading would help you grow your network, because it helps you to join conversations and make meaningful contributions in conversations. And it helps you to connect with professionals, even in areas that are not your area. Because you read and you read widely, you're able to at least understand what they say and ask reasonable questions, and even make contributions where, if it happens that you have a bit of knowledge. And with reading, you can also know how to say, okay, I don't understand it quite well, but this is what I think. Is it true? Be willing to take risk in terms of finding out more information that somebody, so that the person you're discussing with knows that, okay, this person is also willing to learn. They're willing to move the extra mile to read more, to learn more. And of course, with that, you build credibility.
3 minutes.
And sorry, what?
3 minutes.
Oh, okay. So with the whole thing that I've discussed now, I've talked before now, you realize that reading is going to help you towards get into high society. And by high society, I'm not talking about what people think about in terms of high society. I'm talking about rooms like this where people of influence find themselves, where decisions are made, and where leadership is built, where business and policy is discussed. If you don't read, you can't be in this kind of room, especially in a foreign country where your credibility is always being questioned. So for you to be in this kind of room and stay in this kind of room and move up in this kind of room, you would have to do what? Read and study. So now the next question you may ask me is, what should you read, right? I'll only tell you that what you read depends on where you find yourself. Of course, if you're a student, then you have to read and pass your courses first before you talk about other things, right? But then, of course, if you're already on the professional ladder, depending on the stage of life you are and where you are, you need to read about languages. If you need to learn languages, you have to learn it. You have to read about the career that you want to take, as well as financial literacy books. Because one thing that happens to a lot of us when we move abroad is that our finances, of course, we start struggling from day one, right? And then with all of the things that happen with you taking care of people at home and stuff like that, your finances are in tatters. You need to read books that will help you to put your finances in order, because you can never climb in your career if you don't have enough resources to be stable. And then, of course, you need to read books that, build you as a person. You need to understand the country where you are. Read important biographies to see how people have done it, what strikes you about their lives, and what you can learn from them. And of course, as an immigrant, you must read about immigration and legal information. People will tell you whatever they tell you. I can tell you this from my own experience. What you hear from people about immigration and stuff like that may not be what is relevant to you. They could be telling you their own experience based on what is relevant to them and not what is relevant to you. So you should be able to read the materials yourself. And of course, with the way the world is, you can find information anywhere. What information on anything is something you can find anywhere. They are all over the internet. You can go to government websites, you can go to libraries and stuff like that. And so begin to challenge yourself to read now. Because if you form the habit of reading, then reading becomes no problem. And you can pick up any material, read it, make sense out of it, decide whether it's worth it or not, and then drop it by. Retain some of the information that will be relevant to you and put the rest aside. So small daily reading, it could be any kind of reading. It mustn't be books. It could be articles, whatever you find. You can also listen to them, right? But make it a habit of reading, finding out something new. At the end of the day, ask yourself every day, what new thing have I read today? What new information have I internalized today? So what you should read now is what is relevant to you right now and what will be relevant to you in 5 years' time, where you are going, the road you want to move. If you want to become a manager tomorrow, you shouldn't be reading just about football. No, you should be reading how to manage, how to lead. You look for books that talk about leading. You look for people in leadership positions and read about them and listen to, just like Chemaka has said. So I can only tell you that you have to read your future into existence. If you don't do that, that future will not exist for you. So, to conclude, I can tell you that, you would have to put so much effort in reading, because that is the only option you have to move ahead. It's not just abroad, also in Nigeria, wherever you are, you would have to read to move ahead. Why you do the reading, why you do the toil, why you spend energy reading, it's quiet. Nobody sees it. Nobody sees the effort. But the effect will be powerful at the end of the day, because what people will see will be the result. They wouldn't know when you invested your time reading, gathering all the information you have. But by the time you begin to manifest, you will see that the readings you've done in quiet, the results are no longer quiet. So I can tell you that reading changes how you think. It changes how you speak, because you have more information to to discuss. It changes how you treat people, because you learn a lot and realize that everybody has something to say and that everybody can be listening to. And then it also changes how people treat you, because the way you speak would give people impressions of you, and then they will sort of treat you better if you present yourself better. And of course, with all this, how far you can go could be changed by how much you read. With that, I would say thank you. And then if there's any questions, we'll be glad to see how we can answer them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kenneth, for that wonderful presentation. I really felt I really enjoyed the presentation. Well, all the presentations have been awesome, and I have so many punchlines, so many important keywords that I've been noting down from your presentation. From Kenneth, one of the things that came out very clearly is how confidence is a preparation that opens door for opportunities. And then reading is one way to build confidence. So I'm happy how all our panelists have been able to connect their topic to reading, what we should read, how we should read, and why we should read, So thank you so much, Kenneth. Thank you, Chiamaka, and thank you, Sam, for your wonderful presentations. I am sure our listeners and everybody present here, or many people present here, will probably have questions based on your presentation. So please, if you're here and you have questions for any of the panelists, the floor is open for you to ask a question right now, or if you don't want to make use of the microphone, you can put the question in the chat box, and I'll read it out to them. If you have any question, please do raise your hand, and I will give you the floor. Yeah, maybe I will start with the questions because, like I said, the discussion has been very, very interesting, and I like the way they broke everything down. So, okay, there's a question here. Maybe I will pause mine and then take the question from Sarah. Sarah, you said, "Thank you, Kenny. I really enjoyed your presentation. I've seen people turn their lives around from the little habit of reading they did in private." Okay, all right. So that is affirming what Kenny presented. And Christian said, "Thank you, all presenters. This has been an enriching evening." All right. So I want to start bringing some of the things you talked about into, asking practical questions that will help our listeners and people that will listen to this webinar in the future to address some of their specific problems. Chiamaka, I will start with you from your presentation. And I'm quite intrigued by your professional background at the moment as a HR. And of course, as a HR, you review people's applications. You are involved in hiring and firing people at their job place, which is, most the experience of many immigrants here. So my first question to you is, many immigrants struggle to secure jobs that match their qualifications or professional experience. How can they navigate the challenges of, non-recognition of foreign qualifications, requirement for local certifications, and lack of local experience? And these are some of the things you all touched during your presentation. Now, can you bring out practical ways that, immigrants can help to address this issue, especially with regarding to securing jobs that match their qualifications or professional experience?
Okay. Thank you for that question, Dr. JP. Yes, the challenges that immigrants face in a new society is quite enormous, especially when it comes to securing jobs in their field. Like I said in my presentation, it's very important for you to understand how your qualification aligns with the framework in the host society. And one way you can find out is, of course, by doing research and then by comparing your qualification, because there are so many tools in these countries. Like in the UK, there are tools like the CIPD framework, there is ENIC for various qualifications to compare your bachelor's degree or master's degree and your skills. So you need to, first of all, compare your certifications and your qualifications. And then by doing that, you'll be able to find the loopholes that you need to bridge. And how you bridge these loopholes is by taking further studies. Basically, you have to take further qualifications. You have to pay for courses, short courses, get the relevant qualifications in that society to beef up what you have. And with the UK, for instance, UK is more of a skill-based community or country, sorry, rather than a qualification-based country. So they value more of your skills, not your qualification, not the degree you have, not your background, but what can you do? What can you prove yourself to do? So this is where the skills, a lot of us back home, to be honest, not to sound disrespectful, we are more focused on reading, getting qualifications without actually knowing how to translate these qualifications in real life situations. So, but the UK society doesn't appreciate that. They appreciate what you can do, what you have been doing, what results you can produce, right? So when you do these local qualifications to beef up your skills or your qualification that you're coming with, they also value work experience. So the challenge that most immigrants have in the UK, especially because I understand there are majorly two pathways to migrate into the UK, which is the study route and then the skilled worker route. But the skilled worker route now, they've clamped down on it recently in the recent years. So basically, it's more of the study route to migrate into the UK. So most people migrate from their country to study, to do their masters or their PhDs. And sometimes they do their studies in a field that is completely different from their background. Although some, especially those on scholarships, they tend to follow up, because you need to show continual professional development. So they kind of stick to what they've been doing. But for someone like me, I saw the opportunity to migrate as a chance for me to actually do what I was passionate about, even though I didn't have the background officially on paper back home. So when I came in, like most other people, after your master's, you have the qualification, but you don't have the work experience. And the truth is that back home, you don't even have the work experience back home. So how do you expect the companies in the UK to employ you just because you have a qualification? It's very difficult. So the best way to get these jobs is by beefing up on your work experience. You need to find a way you need to get the work experience anyhow. And basically, it's by volunteering, by taking your internship seriously when you are studying, because most universities, they offer opportunities for internship. But a lot of us master students, we don't take it, because during my own time, most of my classmates were not interested in the internship, which is the real work experience, just because it's not paid. Most of us have the mindset of, oh, I need money. It's all about shift. So they just find a way around it, and then they go to pack shifts and get money. But for me, I worked in an energy company in London for 6 months, and I was not paid for it, right? I take that as a privilege, because I know some people too, without doing the paid work, they might not be able to survive that period. So you need to get that work experience from your school while you are studying, and after your studies, while you're doing whatever you are doing, if you feel you want to progress in your career, you need to find a way to get that experience. Right. So that's just it for me.
Yeah, I think, Chiamaka, you've really answered very well and using your personal experience. Thank you so much for sharing. But hang on, before I go to another person, there are so many hands up. Before I'll take the hands, Chiamaka, I want to ask you this question because it's coming from Nolisa Sarah. And I think it kind of relates to your personal life. How do you juggle life as someone interested in building professional growth with family life? Look, I'm sure you have a young family here, a student, a professional, into a professional career. How are you juggling? How were you able to juggle the three together? Because it's three. There's work, there's school, there's family, career, and all that. So how did you manage to do that?
Well, I appreciate that question because it's very interesting, and this is where personal differences come into play. Because to be honest, it's a very difficult situation. It's a very, very challenging situation for me. I would say the past 2 years ago, the past 2 years was one of my most difficult periods, because then I wasn't just studying, I was pregnant. I came in as a master's student who was expecting a child. And then with the financial setbacks, it was not easy. You know how it is if you are funding for a self-funder in the UK, paying that huge amount, and then also setting off bills. We were really, really, really struggling. But for me, I took it as a time for me to learn. I knew that, I just cannot get it wrong now, because if I do, it's going to have a very long impact on my career. But it's not easy. Like I said, it is not easy. But this is where your personal strength comes in. You will need to be ready to make sacrifices. You will need to be able to let a lot of things go. You will need to be able to, like, for someone who has kids, you need to be ready to pay for childcare, and it's not joke. Childcare in the UK is not joke. But
If you don't have the money.
Yeah, you'll be torn in between, oh, should I pay for childcare or should I just wait and watch my kids grow? And at the same time, the time you're spending with your kids, if you decide to focus more on your family, you also know that it's going to take you more time if you want to come back to your career. Do you get? So navigating the two or juggling the two is not easy. So you'll be ready to make a lot of sacrifices. But if you're not happy to make that sacrifice, there's no easy way to it, to be honest. I don't know of any easy way to it. There's no shortcut to it. It's difficult, but it's able.
Okay, I want to go to Christian and Elias, whose hand has been up. But before that, Sam, do you have anything to say, Dr. Sam, on the issue of juggling between life and professional growth, especially as an immigrant? Do you have any tip to contribute to
Well,
that?
I think Chiamaka has really answered it very well. One key thing for me is planning. One, just like everyone has said, you have to understand how the society works. And part of that is how raising children works here. Because you need, unlike back home, where you have family members around to help with looking after kids and all of that, like Chamaka has said, here, you either do it yourself or you pay for it. So you just have to plan based on what you want, your career path with all of the things that have been said. What do you want to pursue at a particular time? And then plan it with the time needed to either look after the kids with your partner who stays at home, who goes to work. You just need to plan that out. That's the key strategy for dealing with that.
Yeah. So I think the key thing from both of you is sacrifice and planning. So quick. All right. Chris, your hand has been up. Do you have the floor now?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ihemes here. Please confirm you can hear me clearly.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Good morning. Good evening. This here, I'm in Nigeria anyway. It has been a wonderful evening, and to be honest with you, I enjoyed every bit of the presentation. So thank you for the opportunity you gave me to learn from your individual experiences. I have some concerns that I'm putting forward in the form of questions. I have come to learn that perhaps greater percentage of Nigerians or immigrants in the UK that we are using as our case study happen to go there for studies. So the language of reading, navigating their lives through reading and all that may not likely be far. But I am also confident that there are some persons also who may not likely go to UK or any other country, principally for education. So my first question is a situation where one is working, and the desire to read is also there lurking. How does one, navigate this particular situation where you are working and each time you get exhausted? So how do you manage to engage yourself with studies? That's number one question. Number two question, and I think I may likely channel my question to Kene, that's the female presenter. Sorry if I am calling the wrong name. Chiamaka, thank you. So I want to understand, I want you to help me, when it comes to selection of materials to read. Yeah, you mentioned that it's not every book, that one should read. And I'm also making reference to a particular text I read from one Nigerian author that is based in UK. The title of the book is Against Agency, against decolonization, taking agency seriously. And in that particular text, the author Olufemi Taiwo was making reference to the fact that we live in an information age, where there is no particular relevance to any information. So he was like of the opinion that you should read for the reading sake, you should grasp any knowledge whatsoever without minding whether it has any relevance to your to your endeavor or something like that. So that's the second question. And then maybe the last question is perhaps I am not a fan of Japa, not necessarily because I don't like it or because it doesn't speak sense into my career. But I am thinking, in some of the questions I always put across to my students, when you are leaving the country, you are leaving behind your parents, your siblings, sometimes your wife, your children, and all that. Now you are in a country where the means of livelihood is very, very cheap, and life is easier being managed by a country that works. But when you come to Nigeria, you just pray that Nigeria doesn't happen to you, as we are fond to say. An indication that yes, a place is better than a place. So my question is to all the presenters, yeah, you have to think way in which you can help your life navigate the challenges, as you're migrating and all that. But there is a fundamental problem at home, which has to do with, somehow we can blame the government of the day. So, but my question is there any efforts being made, whether at the level of individual, whether at the level of a group, to bettering the lot of our society, our country, so that at least, the this japa of a thing, they call it japa syndrome, can actually be checkmated or even, ameliorated, that kind of thing. So these are my questions. Thank you
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you so much. Just before I distribute the questions to our panelists, can you help me paraphrase your first and second question in just a sentence?
Okay, my first question is, how do you read? How do you engage, with extensive reading or something like that when, in the course of your migration, you find yourself within a job that doesn't give you time?
Okay. Second
Yeah.
question.
How do you combine reading and working, basically?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
exactly, yes. So the second question is, how do you select, what to read?
Okay.
Particularly, I'm directing the question to Chiamaka, who
Chiamaka,
mentioned
yeah.
that you don't have to read everything, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, so thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I will distribute, I think the three
All right,
questions.
JP, why
Yeah.
don't you ask Elias to ask his question so that then we can probably
Okay,
maybe
take
they are
all the
similar and then
questions
we can
at
take
once.
everything
Yes,
together. Yeah.
yes, I think that's a better because of time. Yes. So Elias, please, you have the floor.
Yeah, good evening, everyone, and many thanks for the invite. Well, I saw the invite in John Paul's WhatsApp status, so I said, okay, let me come and hear what you guys are discussing, which has been quite a very rich conversation. The presenters, they really did, yeah, they really did well, and yes, people may not know, but we've all lived together at the same house. So before I ask my question, I would just want to caution that the third question from the last speaker was not, I don't think that it may suit with this conversation because it may distract us from what we are talking about. That being said, my question goes to Kenechukwu Eluabuchi, whom we used to live together in the same house. So Kene, for someone, those of us who are researchers, we always read our own material, something within our field. Like I'm a hydrologist, I would like to read hydrology stuff. And from time to time, I read newspaper articles. So which book would you recommend to someone like me who is always focused on reading stuff in their area? Which book would you recommend to me to start, to use as a starter to build that reading culture, to read things out of my scope? Thank you very much. And I can see you've become the man that I expected you to be. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So I will start with the first question, which of course goes to Kene. So Kene, the question as paraphrase is, how do you read or engage with reading when faced with, the challenges of job and reading? How do you navigate, job and reading together, especially as an immigrant?
So that question came from, what's his name again? I picked it up before. Onoja. Yeah,
Onoja, yes.
Yeah, somebody Onoja. Number one, the first question I would ask you is, what do you actually call reading? Because that's what will define what you could do in combination with having sort of a very busy day and stuff like that. Because when we talk about reading, right, we are talking about getting information that has been delivered in text form. That is basically reading, right? So you have information in text form. But then the good thing about the world today is that you don't just have to read it by yourself. You could actually listen to them if you have the right kind of app that sort of reads this for you. So if you ask me how you can combine working with reading, I work every day, so I can relate with your question, right? And the job that I do now, yes, it requires me to read because I'm still in the teaching line, even though I'm an engineer now. So because my job is engineering job, but then I still have to read. But how do I read other things? And what I can tell you is whatever job you do, and at the end of the day, you are so tired that you can't read, you should begin to reassess how you sort of look at that job, how you relate with that job. Because any job that you do should be able to give you the opportunity to develop yourself. And the only way you can develop yourself is to do what? Train yourself, right? Now, if you work, and the only thing you do is you go every day, you work, they bombard you with work as if you are a machine. And you can't read things about, even in your place of work, how to move to the next level of management, how to move to the next level of leadership, how to move to the next level of being part of strategy, how to really grow in that business or in whatever job you're doing. You're probably in the wrong job. So how you can combine that is you go to work, right? On your way home, depend. If you drive, then of course it's a bit of bad luck because I myself, as much as I try, so as much as possible, I try not to drive to work, to use public transport. Well, you said you're in Nigeria, so it's a bit different. But what I do is that I use public transport, not because I don't have a car, but simply because if I'm on public transport, if it takes me 30 minutes for them to drive to work, I could use that 30 minutes to do what? Read up some things that I want to read. So that's because I have a family. So most times when I come home, it's a bit difficult to handle family and then do extra reading. But you can also, so I try to use that window of going to work and coming back from work to do some reading, right? And the other thing you can also do is, even if you have a family, even if you have a job that sort of destroys you at the end of the day, when you come back home, try as much as possible to go to bed early enough and then maybe wake up 1 hour or a few minutes before you start preparing to go to work. If you can do that, that would help you. But make sure you dedicate some time because this is time for self-development. And if you don't develop yourself, I mean, just imagine you going to withdraw cash every day without investing anything. At some point, you realize that you get stuck where you are. So that time to read is something you must create by yourself. Look into your routine. See where you have windows of being useful to yourself. Take it seriously as your personal investment, investing in yourself. Because if you don't see it as you investing in yourself, something necessary that you must do to invest in yourself, it mustn't be reading other things. Like I said, if you look at my slide, I said that what you need to read depends on at what stage of life you are and what you're doing. If you are at the stage of life where you don't have the option to begin to read Harry Potter, there's no reason to read Harry Potter. What you need to read at that point is things that are relevant to your career and things that are relevant to you functioning properly in society, right? If you're at a stage where you are thinking about management, you're thinking about moving forward in your life, going to the higher position, you have to create time to read the materials that will take you there. When you get there and you have free time, you can then start reading Harry Potter. So I've basically almost answered how do you decide what to read. So what you should read is what is relevant to you at each point in time, bearing in mind also where you are going. So you read what is relevant today and read what is relevant to next 1 year and relevant to next 5 years. See how you then distribute the reading so that before the end of the year, you've covered things in this area. Now, I might digress a little bit, or rather, I would sort of deviate a little bit from what people have in their head as reading. I can tell you, you don't need to read a complete book. You don't need to buy a big book like this and then say, oh, this is the book I'm reading, and then I have to finish it by the end of the year. No, you don't need that, right? If you can't afford to have a book, you have a phone. There are some websites where you can download some of these books and you can read them from your phone. It may not be the most convenient way because of problems with your eye, but if you apportion 20 minutes every day and find the sections of the book that are relevant, go through. You can even ask ChatGPT to probably tell you which sections of this book, or you can read about the book where they've summarized the chapter summary to see the ones that are relevant to what you need, and then you focus on these ones. When you then have free time, you can then read the complete material. So that's how you make out time to read and decide what to read as well as how to read it. So I hope my answers basically attend to your question and they are helpful.
Yeah, Kene, I think because of time, I think you've answered both the first and second question from Onoja, because the second question is how do you select what to read, and I think you've been able to answer those two questions. So I will skip the second question and I will go to the third question from Onoja, and I would like Dr. Sam to address that. I kind of understand where he's coming from, and he's talking about as immigrants, how do we make efforts to better Nigeria, as immigrants? I understand that, and I have a question on myself relating to that. Perhaps Sam, you could help in answering that question. There's issue of black tax, which is a big thing for immigrants. Many immigrants face significant financial pressure from home, including, of course, remittance costs. Now, Onoja is asking, as immigrants, how do we better? I mean, this looks as if it's a little bit outside reading, but again, it's also an issue of immigration, an issue that immigrants face. So we will take that question. So how do immigrants contribute to development at home? But again, how will immigrants manage the issue of black tax and remittance, which is a huge pressure, a huge financial pressure, especially for new immigrants who are grappling with issues around, trying to settle in their new country and trying to meet expectations back home. So,
Yes.
Dr. Sam.
Yes. So that question is important, although we're discussing reading, because in my presentation, I mentioned that people have either push or pull factors that make them leave. Mm-hmm. Some of us had experiences where we were in a system which wasn't working properly, and that contributed to moving. And then you'll find that some of us do go back, for example, in lecturing, working in higher institutions, we do go back to try and implement some changes. But what I need to caution about is that in my experience, sometimes those changes are not accepted, are not welcome because of the established way things are being done. All right. So how the people I have met and myself, how we try to contribute to development is that you have compared two systems. Okay. You know the social language of your home country, and now you know the social language of the host country where you are. So it's trying, one, in education, for example, trying to contribute to people who ordinarily wouldn't have gone to school or universities, trying to encourage them to do that. And I know individuals who have established schools and try to maintain standards that they want in those schools. It could be secondary school, primary school, or even in some cases, private institutions, higher institutions of learning. So those are the ways I have seen people contribute to trying to replicate what they experience as being better systems where they are in their home countries. Now, related to that is the black tax. Now, one thing that creates problem is expectations. When people move, sometimes the migrants themselves carry the expectation that people have back home that, oh, because you are in XYZ country, you are expected to be a millionaire, you're expected to have X amount of money, you're expected to be doing one thing or the other. So that creates pressures for individuals who are still struggling to adapt to their society. All they're thinking is, oh, I have not done this. I've been here for 6 months. I've been here for 1 year and I haven't done that. I'm supposed to do that. I know there are some people who go back even after 1 year. They will try to impress. So if people can try to be realistic and explain the social language of where they are and be truthful to people that they have left in their home countries, the situation of the countries where they are, the challenges that we are discussing now, most people do not know it and they do not understand it. So trying to educate people about the social language, the challenges people face will sort of lower the expectations that people have in terms of how much. You might send somebody 50,000 naira and they'll be like, how much is 60,000 naira if I convert it to dollar or I convert it to pound, that you are just sending me this small amount of money when you are earning in this currency. So those are wrong impressions that people have, and some migrants encourage that because of the way they behave. Okay. So if we can start to address that so that people understand what is happening. I've heard some people say, oh, UK people are stingy. Okay. So and then they'll begin to wonder, if you send some money, they'll begin to wonder, oh, but someone who is in the US send this X amount of money. So I think to address that problem, why it is important that migrants contribute to the development of their home countries, like the example I gave before, it is important that they make people back home to understand what is happening in the home countries. And that will sort of help address the issue of mental health problems that people face that lead to a lot of problems that we'll not have the time to go into this evening.
Thank you so much for that detailed explanation. Chris, I also wanted to just add to this. When we talk about immigrants' contribution to home country, it's not just about knowledge, which I think is where you knowledge and skills, which is important. If you look at foreign remittance to Nigeria in the last year, I think after oil and one other sector, it should probably come third on how much we remit back home, and this money are used to sustain the local economy. So I think immigrants, if you look at, so between 2015 when Buhari came in, or when APC came in, till now, the number of Nigerians that ran away from that country as a result of so many issues, they've all in one way or the other, remitted a lot of funds to sustain people back home. See, of course, some of us that are in touch with Nigeria knows how hard things are, and we personally know how many families we are sustaining because we are here. For example, I'm a lecturer in Nsukka. If I am still in Nsukka, there are so many people who are going to school today that won't be able to go to school because my salary as a lecturer in Nsukka won't be able to, even take care of me, not to talk of another person. But there are people that I know, so many people here who are able to help people back home because they are here. I think it's also one way through which we contribute to development back home. I know it's important to contribute skills and knowledge. There are so many ways to do that, but I think Dr. Sam has helped to answer that. So I just wanted to hint to that. The last question from Dr. Elias goes to Ken. Ken, of course, you've been.
Of course, I think I've basically covered it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I've answered the other part of it, which is because if the way I understood this question is, I'm a narrow reader. How do I expand my scope, right? Now, the thing is, I would tell you that it's about habit. Now, you can't, like I said, everything is about interest, right? It's about interest. I wouldn't want you to begin to read Harry Potter simply because you want to expand your scope, right? You've been reading hydrological materials because you are an expert in hydrology, right? And part of, if I understand when we were together, if I understood what you were doing, we were looking at the Lake Chad Basin and stuff like that, that area, right? What is related to understanding hydrology in Lake Chad Basin would also be understand the people around Lake Chad Basin. There will be books, there will be write-ups about who they are, So you can even expand towards reading their histories, understand why they behave the way they behave. And by the time you begin to move from where you enjoy to things that are related to what you enjoy, but are not exactly what you're interested in, you are expanding. And before you know it, you begin to do what? Compare that to how people in other basins are behaving. What is the common thing among people who live in this kind of environment? Why do they have conflict? Why do they have this? You're already expanding your reading. And that is basically linked to what you're already sort of interested in. If you move away from there, you have a personal life. You may want to build habits, find out how to begin to do what? Improve your finances, investment. You may begin to read about lots of other things that are not directly related. But I'm just giving you instances of how you begin to find things that would begin to interest you. If I remember clearly, I know that you're also interested in football. Yeah, you can begin to read about football management, about how football finances come in. I'm not saying that you should begin to read things that may not really interest you and then discourage you from reading more. But from the things you have interest in, you can begin to do what? Read things that are somewhat related to them, but are not directly in line with where your interest lies. And by the time you begin to read these things, make sure it doesn't have to be interesting at the initial stages, but stick to it. You do it. You ask yourself, what have I learned from this? And before you know it, you begin to sort of develop interest in reading some other related things, and that is how you begin to move. And of course, I also know that you probably would want to be in management at some point, or at least get to management level. So you should begin to read things about management. So it's also about looking at your future. What should I read today? Like I said in my presentation, you have to read your future into existence. So you have to find out what you need to get to that future. Because at the management level, they're no longer talking about ideology. They're talking about managing resources. They're talking about managing people. They're talking about lots of other things. And these are things you need to acquire the skills early enough before you get there. Otherwise, you'll not get there. Or if you get there, you won't fit in there and they'll push you away. So
right, thank you so
what I would say.
much. Yeah, I think you've done justice to that question. Thank you so much. I think some of the questions I have for Chiamaka has already been answered by her in her presentation. So kudos to that. I know we are running short of time, but this discussion is getting more interesting. And for the sake of people that will listen to this webinar after now, I think it's important we trash some of the questions. Although we are focusing more on reading, which you guys have done justice to, it's important to also address some issues, general issues that immigrants, that affect immigrants, especially here in the UK and Europe. Dr. Sam, I will come to you. Of course, you're an academic and you've interacted with so many students from diverse backgrounds. What are your tips on how immigrants can handle issues of racism and discrimination? Issues around workplace discrimination, racial profiling, and bias in job hiring. So these are some of the things immigrants suffer.
So what I've realized that is one of the impacts of discrimination is self-confidence. So it knocks the individual down. You begin to doubt yourself. Am I no longer intelligent? Do I not have what it takes to do what I have come to do, whether it's studies or work? You begin to doubt yourself. But to address the issue of discrimination, one needs to understand that it is biased from the other individual. It doesn't reflect the abilities of the person, of the migrant. It is a bias from that individual. And naturally, what you will find is that we have what is called unconscious bias, which you might just see somebody and just somehow you make an assumption within you and start to treat the person based on that assumption, which doesn't have any basis on fact or reality, but just it happened. And some of these things may be playing out when you are in another country and they have those. And so recognizing that it doesn't reflect what you are or the abilities you have, it helps to shield you from that self-confidence issues. Then 2 is to recognize it when it happens. Okay. Is it really discrimination or is it difference in social language? Okay. So sometimes, okay, for example, someone from another culture who sees not looking at seniors straight in the face as respect, and then they find themselves in a culture where you have to look at someone directly while you're speaking to them as a way of showing that you are honest, may struggle with that. So when that person, maybe you are looking down when you're talking to them and they interpret that as hiding some information and start to react somehow, you may interpret that, oh, they are ignoring me or they are behaving somehow, and interpret it as discrimination of some sort or some microaggression. So recognizing what discrimination truly is also important, and it's part of that learning the culture or the social language of the community.
Yeah.
Then, when it is truly identified that it is discrimination, then you'll find that most of these countries, top destination countries that I have listed, have rules or regulations around discrimination. So what one needs to do to address it where it happens is to familiarize oneself with the legal aspect of it. What are the laws? What are the protections available, whether it is where you work or the society generally? When you familiarize with yourself with that, then it is to take action. And taking action can be simply interacting with the person, because if it is a misunderstanding, if you express your concern to the individual in a friendly, polite manner, what you have just said, I don't understand it. What do you mean? They might explain and you find that it is just misunderstanding. But where it is really, really obvious that it is, then you may want to speak to your line manager or discuss with colleagues or other people who have had similar experience. And that is why I mentioned that mentorship is important. So those are the key ways one can address them. And you may find out that it may not lead to escalating issues. And then you address it either by understanding that it is just a misunderstanding, or the line manager helping you to address it without escalating, or if it becomes necessary, escalating it. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Sam, thank you so much. I think you've hit a very important point, which also boils down to your presentation, the importance of learning the social language of your host country. Because I think many migrants confuse difference in social language with discrimination or racism. So I think understanding that difference will help in addressing that problem. Yeah, that's a very important point. Thank you so much. I have one more last question for Kenneth, because I think this question is important. Because I mean, during Chiamaka's presentation, she mentioned that there are two routes through which many people come to the UK. It's either through the study routes or through the skill.
All over the world is the same, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, and of course, at the moment, is the study route that's working in the UK, because the skill worker route has been clamped on. Now, Kenny, I'm very much interested in your career progression, because, of course, personally, I know you are an academic and you've transitioned from academics to industry. What tips? Of course, many people come here to study, but again, as we've been talking, they're not able to secure jobs that match their qualification and their skills. How were you able to, transition from academics to industry? And what advice will you give to immigrants who come here to study, who wants to, go to the industry?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. Before I sort of address how you can do the transition, right, I would sort of also mention something, a background problem as to why immigrants are not able to really transition into industry. Chiamaka mentioned it in her discussion when she was mentioning the fact that people come in to study, and what is on their mind is to do what? To go to work and make money. And when you look at your background from where you're coming from, right, it's not just about you not having work experience in your host country. You also lack the real experience. I tell you for an example, we study, we go to school, and then our school system is designed to do what? Give us lectures. But our system doesn't give us enough exposure to not only industry, but to also practical skills that you can put in your CV. Here in Germany, where I live, having studied, worked as a research assistant in the university, I realized that, honestly, by watching our two systems, if someone comes from Germany and someone comes from Nigeria, I wouldn't think I'll be biased to say that I pick the person from Germany. Not because this person is academically more intelligent, but simply because this person has more exposure to things that are relevant to the industry, to employment than you. You know the book, right? But I can tell you that there are people who could be professors in a field who don't have any real understanding of how the basic practical things happen in that area. They've only read it, they've only written about it, they've only done some things that if you put them in today's industry, in their area where they are experts in, they can't fit in simply because they don't have the practical experience. Molecular biology, for example, molecular engineering and stuff like that. People come here while they are students, they take up what's called student jobs, not really, like student internships, not just internships, also jobs in labs where they get exposure. Jobs in industry are student jobs where they get exposure. And these things come in their CV. So that by the time this person is graduating after 3 years in school, their CV says they've worked here, they've gathered this experience. Even if it's in the lab, this experience is relevant in the industry. What experience did you get? And then you move into this system and you want to come into this system and you have the option because if you're a student, then there are chances for you to at least do a bit of internship, volunteer. You see where the black tax comes in. The pressure on you're already abroad to make money instead of investing in your future pushes you to go and take shifts, to go and take jobs instead of volunteering in industry where you can get the experience you would then put in your CV. And so by the time you finish from academics, your CV is basically empty. Your CV says you understand economics, what Adam Smith says, but it doesn't say that you've worked in a system where these things are applied. So they don't even. So it's no longer you have a disadvantage in 2 points. One, the work culture. You don't have any understanding of how the work culture in your new place is, and secondly, you don't have the practical experience. But if you have the practical experience, you can be integrated into the work culture. So I would advise people when you come, ask yourself one question: do you want to stay or you want to move? If you want to stay, use your studentship period to look for internships or voluntary jobs or whatever that would, if it doesn't show that you've gathered experience in your field of interest, at least it should show that you've gathered a working experience in your place, in your host country. Because these are the two experiences you need to get into the industry. The culture, the working culture of the country, as well as experience in the area. Because with just working culture in your country, in your host country, you may get a job. I mean, if you network yourself, you may get a job in an area that is not where you want to be, right? Survival job, not just normal team job, but then some other jobs that help you to survive. While you then look for opportunities in your place of interest. Sorry, one other thing that I would add is, like Chamaka also mentioned, you have to structure your CV. Don't just look at the job title. Read the job description. I studied, I'm a biologist, so I'm sort of a biochemist, more of chemistry and biology. But my job is engineering job. If you don't read through the job, then you're never going to understand that you have the qualification for this job. It's just that the job has a different name. And when you read the job description, find out how to match what you have as experience to the job. You don't want to apply and then they look at your CV. Mind you, whenever I look at people's CV, the question I ask is, if I look at your CV for 10 seconds, am I able to pick up the information that I need from it? If I can't pick up the information I need from it in 10 seconds, then there is something wrong with your CV. And that's why if you have a CV that is large, because you want to show that you've done whatever and whatever. Put the experiences that are relevant first, the qualifications that are relevant first, or have a summary page in front of your CV where you've highlighted the experiences, just one line bullet point, a few line bullet points that should highlight the job requirement that you have fulfilled, that you have qualifications for. And like I said, make sure you've decided that you want to go to industry, and begin from the point when you come in to position yourself to move to industry. Otherwise, you could find yourself in a position where you are too academic to qualify for the industry. So please, these are some things. Of course, I would expand on this if I have more time, but unfortunately, I've only tried to sort of pick one or two things that people have to bear in mind when they plan to transition to industry.
Yeah, but I think you've done justice to that. Thank you so much, Kenneth. Thank you, Sam, and thank you, Chairman. I can't imagine having better panelists to do justice to this discussion. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for your wonderful insight into these issues. I'm very sure that our listeners and people that will watch this webinar in the future will have a lot to benefit from this section.